start streaming button, and what this is doing, this is a program called Open Broadcaster, which is totally free. It's open source software. Everything I'm going to be talking about today is free, because the name of this session is Open Source Software for the Classroom on a Budget. I am on a budget. It is, you want money? Really? No, you don't get any. So I find a lot of free stuff out there. I've been doing it for years. Back when I was a visual art teacher instead of a technology teacher, my budget was $2,000 per year, but I was in 4 different buildings with 500 kids in each building. So you can do the math. I found a lot of free things to do with the kids to stretch that money, and it was a lot of fun. Switching technology, I continue to do that. Now what this program is doing is it's recording everything on the screen right now into a video file that I could then upload to YouTube or edit in Movie Maker or iMovie. Probably not iMovie, because this, unfortunately, is one of the few programs I'm going to show you today that is not cross-platform. This is Windows only, but if you're using a Mac, you've got a great program on your computer called QuickTime Player, which can do the same. And that's also free, and it's already installed, so you don't have to download it at all. Okay, so this is the interface. I'm explaining this now because of how this presentation is set up. It's hard for me to show this while I'm using it. It's more meant to be in the background. So, welcome to Open Source Software on a Budget. My name is Aaron Smith. My website is aaronbsmith.com. If you go there, you're going to find links to everywhere I am on the internet. You're going to find links to my podcast site, which needs to be updated. It hasn't been updated in a while. But my Tumblr page, which gets updated frequently. It includes links to this presentation and everything else. You might have to scroll down a little bit to see it, but it'll say PUWT presentations. And that's a link. You click on it, and it'll take you to all 4 of my presentations for today. And there's a link to my YouTube page where all my recorded presentations will be uploaded to there already. My session 1 is already there. I uploaded it during the keynote because I could. I've been doing other things since then, so session 2 will be up eventually. It's not up yet. I'll try to get everything uploaded before I go home today, maybe. Let's see. And my Twitter account, because Twitter is awesome. Oh, speaking of Twitter, how many of you use Twitter? If you're not using Twitter, I sincerely recommend it, even if it's only for conferences, because it's a great back channel. There's 2 hashtags that I'd like to point out. The first one is the one for this conference, PUWT13 is the hashtag for this conference. If you go to that hashtag in Twitter, you will see people talking about this conference. I know things were just scrolling past during Dr. Kraft's keynote because he's awesome. And not just because he gave me a shout out that I was not expecting. But that was really cool. The other one that I sincerely recommend you do is a year-long one, not just for today. Hashtag PGTech is for a community of Prince George's County teachers who are sharing cool things about technology. If you've got a question about technology, go on there, use that hashtag and ask a question. If you find something really cool that you want to share, use that hashtag and share it. Other teachers in Prince George's County will see it. Now, right now, the community is mostly technology teachers because we're the ones who sort of started it. There's some media specialists in there as well, but for the most part, it's tech teachers. I would love to see it expanded to all teachers, which is why I keep hyping on this in all my sessions. It's really cool, and if you look, there might be some familiar faces up on that screen. The one on the top, that's right, that's Selena Ward, and she's incredibly awesome, and she posts to that frequently. The guy on the bottom you've probably never seen before. I probably should have cropped that off. Okay, moving on. Okay, so open source software, I'm not going to read the definition. But this is from Wikipedia, which is, actually, I like Wikipedia, I'll admit it. I do let my students use Wikipedia. You might have different opinions. That's okay, you're allowed to. I have found Wikipedia is more accurate than textbooks in most cases. If you don't believe me, how long did it take for your textbook to say Pluto isn't a planet? It was seconds for Wikipedia. If you don't like Wikipedia as a primary source, go to any Wikipedia page, scroll down to the bottom, it lists their sources, and those might be more reputable for you. So even if you don't want to use it as a source, it is a source for sources, if that makes sense. And I do let my students use Wikipedia as a source, but I don't have them do any assignment where they have to list one source. They've got to list more than one. So Wikipedia is one of them, and they go to others. Is there stuff on Wikipedia that isn't true? Anyone can edit it, so yes, that can happen. Most edits that put false information in get changed really fast because other people are checking these. That's a digression. I shouldn't be talking about that right now anyway. But in any case, open source software is software where the code for it is basically out there on the internet for anyone to look at and play with and compile and use as they see fit and change as they see fit. The great thing about it is because so many people are looking at the code, there are fewer bugs. Microsoft is one of the few companies that could afford to pay for the number of people who write the code for, say, Firefox, which happens to be one of the really cool open source software applications that's out there. Most tech companies don't have that kind of budget. But making it open source, suddenly you got all these people who want to make a name for themselves as a programmer and get experience as a programmer working on things. They're all looking at, they're all finding bugs, they're all finding security flaws and fixing them. And that's what makes it better. And oh, by the way, since the code is out there, usually these programs are free. There are companies that make money off of open source software. What they tend to do is they make the code available for free. They make the program available for free. But if you want to pay for additional support or services, you would pay a subscription fee for that. And that's how they earn their living. But the code itself remains free. Google Chrome is based off of an open source program called Chromium, where if you want to see what's going to happen in Chrome, go and get Chromium and install that, and you'll see the developer version where as things get added to Chromium and they get all the bugs worked out, then they add them to Chrome. And Android, which is my favorite phone operating system of all time, I will not buy an iPhone. I think they're dumb. That's a whole other story, which I'm not going to get into, like my Wikipedia rant, but who cares? Most of you don't, probably, so I should shut up now. Okay, moving on. That's open source too. It's based off of Linux, which is an open source operating system for computers, which is a lot of fun to play with if you, like me, are a total nerd. I won't be showing you Linux today. This is more lower entry, okay? No one needs to program. Okay, so Open Broadcaster is the first one that I showed you. If you go to this presentation, each of these is linked, but also if you Google Open Broadcaster, it'll take you to the page. I think it's like obs.com or something like that. It was developed for video gamers. Because there are gamers out there where what they do as a hobby is they load it up on their computer and they stream to the internet videos of them playing insert video game here. Many of them it's Minecraft, some of them it's other games, but they do that as a hobby. There's even a few who've gotten so good at it, they do it for a living. I kid you not. One in particular who I keep talking about in various sessions that I do, his YouTube name is Seth Bling. I know it's kind of weird, but oh well. He used to work for Microsoft. When he quit his job at Microsoft to make YouTube videos full-time, because YouTube does ad revenue sharing for YouTube videos, they thought he was going to work for Google, because Google owns YouTube. He was like, no, no, no. I'm going to work for myself. It's just that I'm putting videos on YouTube. He was making enough to leave Microsoft to do that. That's pretty incredible. But how I use it is when I'm making a video tutorial for my students, here's how to edit an Excel document. Here's how to copy and paste. Here's how to do research. I can use this to record whatever is on my screen, save it as a video, and I upload it to YouTube. Because YouTube is the best video hosting I've been able to find. If you don't like YouTube, well, if you happen to be a Prince George's County Public Schools employee, you have a Google Apps account. That Google Apps account includes Google Drive. You can throw videos in there and share the link with them. You can make the link public. They can still have access to that video tutorial. I think it works great. Like I said earlier, before I started recording, did I start recording before I started? Oh, in any case, QuickTime Player on the Mac does very similar stuff. Open Broadcaster has a few more features than QuickTime Player does, but for the simple, here's how you do X, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and demonstrating something for a student. QuickTime Player will do all that. If you are following along at home with this presentation, where it says use QuickTime Player, that links you to a tutorial that shows how to do that with QuickTime Player. And there are some video tutorial links for how to use Open Broadcaster right here, for those of you who might be interested in that. Greenshot.org is what I use on my Windows computer. I'm platform agnostic. I use Windows, Mac, and Linux. So, sometimes. Matter of fact, it gets kind of embarrassing when you keep reaching for the mouse connected to one computer, expecting for the cursor on the other computer to move. I may have done that more than once, or twice, or let's stop talking about that. Okay, so basically, this is a program that I needed for Windows. If you're using a Mac, you can feel a little smug right now because it's built in. If you press Command-Shift-3 on your Mac, it will take a screenshot of everything on your screen. Even the cursor, everything. Command-Shift-3. If your speakers are turned up, you'll hear a camera click. If you press Command-Shift-4, your cursor will turn into a set of crosshairs, and you can select a specific area that you want to screen capture instead of everything. If you press Command-Shift-4 and you mouse over to a window with those crosshairs, and so the cursor is over top of a window, and you hit the space bar, it'll capture just that window. Built in. You don't have to install anything extra. On a PC, you've got print screen. You press the print screen button. It's great that it's only one button, except now I have to go and open MS Paint and I have to paste it in there, and then I have to save it. That got tiresome. Screenshot.org, I'm going to hit escape here. If I now press Control Print Screen, because that's what I set my hotkeys up to be, it'll take a picture of everything for me. If I just press Print Screen, I get a crosshair. And I can click and drag and make a screen capture of something. I can take that screen capture, I can put it in a handout for my students, or I can put it up on a website. I gotta change where I am. Okay, so it runs in the background. So if I click on this little arrow down here, it's not showing it to me. This is where I feel embarrassed because usually I see it down here and it's not there. Go away. There we go. There's a screenshot. Screenshot rather. It runs in the background, so I can pull this up if I want to configure things, and I can set all my preferences. So I can say, okay, well, launch it at startup, so it's always running in the background. What keys do I want to press to actually print the screen or copy the screen? How do I want to save it? What format? Where do I want to save it? How I have this personally set up, I have Google Drive installed on my computer, and you don't have to do it with Google Drive. You can use it with Dropbox. You can use it with nothing. I told it where I wanted to save the documents. In my case, I wanted to save all my screenshots to a folder in Google Drive called Screenshots. What's great about that is, if I'm on my home computer and I made a bunch of screenshots for a tutorial, and I go to school but I didn't bring my home computer, I open up my school computer, which also has Google Drive installed on it. There's all my screenshots. And I can start working on what I need to do at school without having to drag computers back and forth. Do you have to do that to use Screenshot and like it? No, you don't. But it's something that's available. There's a lot of settings in here that I didn't mess with at all. There's a lot of settings in here that you probably won't even bother touching. If you want to be a power user, go ahead. I simply like it because now when I press print screen, I make a screen capture. It's not, well, you copied every pixel on the screen, but now you got to paste it into another program that you have to open up. There's even plugins where you can have it automatically post the pictures that you screen capture to various social networks or whatever. I don't use those. But if you wanted to, you could. All right, let's go to the next thing. If you're following along at home, you might have looked at this and said, wow, there's not a lot of slides. That's because for each one of these, I'm going somewhere else and showing you the program. All right, so next up, we've got VLC Media Player. How many of you have tried to play a movie where you found out that you didn't have the drivers or just wasn't playing in that particular software? It's not playing in iTunes. It's not playing in iTunes. A Mac is supposed to play everything. Why is it playing in iTunes? VLC Media Player, open source software, so it's totally free, and it runs on anything. I install it on everything. It's not my first choice for a media player in most cases. But if I try to open a file, if I try to open a media file, my students, my majors and non students, have to make videos for various things. They send me something and it won't play in my media player of choice. VLC Media Player will play it. Every time. I have never opened anything that was an actual workable file and had it not open in VLC Media Player. Matter of fact, I actually have it set as a default on here. So, like if I go to videos, and these are all videos of a school dance that we did, but if you look at that little safety cone icon, that means it's that if I double click on this, it'll open in VLC Media. So like here's a tutorial that I did for something or something, whatever. Oh, look.
Recording.
Here's my presentation from the last session.
Welcome one and all.
It opens in VLC Media Player, and it'll open anything. It will also play audio files. It'll play MP3s, you can save playlists and whatnot, but if you run into a situation where you're trying to get a file to play, and it's a media file, try
But I've learned things since then. I've made huge, horrible mistakes since then.
Just the kind of thing like that website, Khan Academy, stuff like that when they're.
I have actually never watched a Khan Academy video, so I cannot tell you, to be honest.
But like on YouTube, like if that when you're how you would cut and paste, so when someone's talking in the background, that's what you PowerPoint.
VLC Media Player is.
No, I'm sorry, not the media player, the other one.
The Open Broadcaster for recording video.
Yes.
Yeah, any video tutorial I make, if I'm using a Windows machine, I am using Open Broadcaster. Because it's the best software I found. Now, it doesn't work on older computers, like the computers in my computer lab are older than my kindergartners. So, unfortunately, they don't have the hardware compatibility to run it. But if you're using something that's slightly younger than my kindergartners, it'll probably run, because I've been using it for years. It's just that my computers crossed that compatibility line, unfortunately. And for a Mac, I haven't had to install anything because QuickTime Player is just built in. It comes with the operating system. Next up, GIMP.org. Now, this program I've been in love with for years. I'm sure you've all heard of Photoshop. Photoshop has actually become a verb where you photoshopped something. That image isn't real. It's been photoshopped. That's a commercial product. Now, if I asked nicely, and by asked I mean begged on my knees, I could probably get Photoshop installed on all my computers in my computer lab, but I don't want that. Because here's why. It's an expensive program. It's like $600. Last I priced it was $600, and that was the student edition. Why would I want to show my students, here's this really cool program. Now, use it all you can here, because as soon as you go home, you won't be able to afford this, unless you find a copy that fell off the back of a truck. Not doing that. I want them to be self-directed learners. If they find a program that they love, I want them to be able to use it at home, which I think is incredible. GIMP.org does most of what you would see in Adobe Photoshop. Matter of fact, if it's not doable in GIMP but doable in Photoshop, chances are there's a very, very small percentage of the people who use Photoshop that even care about that option. Well, except for the ability to remove motion blur. That's really, really cool. But for the most part, you should teach them how to hold the camera better. GIMP.org is right here. They're up to GIMP 2. And most recently, they made a change so that before you had to install an additional program called Xquartz on a Mac in order for it to run on a Mac. You don't have to do that anymore. Just go to GIMP.org, you download the Mac version, it'll work. If you want to use Windows or Linux, you can download that version and it'll just work. And you've got a whole bunch of tools over here that you can use. You've got a crop tool. You've got, I don't usually have my students use the pencil or paintbrush tool because then they're trying to draw with the mouse. And anyone who's tried to draw a straight line with a mouse knows how fun it is to try to draw a straight line with a mouse. But I do have them go over and use various filters and whatnot. And let's see, open recent. Open this one. I deleted that file. That's why it's not opening. Oh. There we go. Cute little bunny rabbit. This was outside my apartment. Okay, so I have a whole bunch of filters here that I can play with, where let's say that bunny rabbit was a student. One of my hairier students. Doesn't speak up in class much. But that student's doing an awesome project, and I took a picture to document it, and I want to share that picture, but I don't have a media release for that student. But it's such an awesome project, I want to share it. Check this out. I like to use the ellipse select tool, but you could use either one. I'm going to select the face, filters, blur, pixelize. I could play with the settings. I'm not even going to bother. Okay, maybe I should play with the settings because doing this. So basically what I can do, let's press Control F to repeat it a bunch of times. I can use this to obscure. Now I did it too much. Oops. But I can use this to obscure a person's face so I can still share everything else. Yeah, and I'm pressing Control Z over and over again to put it back because I'm apparently running too many things at once. Because I'm not closing programs like I'm supposed to. But I can also go to blur. Gaussian blur is what I like to do. And it's showing me a preview here. Let's turn that up a notch. Okay. You know, part of the reason why this isn't going so well is because this image is huge. Look at the pixel size up here. So it's blurring it very well, but I'm not looking at it in full version. If I went in, let's scale this image down a little bit. Let's make this only 500 pixels wide, because if I'm putting this up on the internet, it doesn't need to be 4,000 pixels wide. And go back to viewing it at 100%. There we go. Now, if I repeat this filter, repeat Gaussian blur, now it works. Okay, so sorry about that little hiccup, but now you know I sometimes make mistakes. Okay. So, there we go. That's just one thing you can do with it. If I have my students doing anything that requires photo manipulation or even just saving something that they made a screen capture of or changing something around, I have them use GIMP because GIMP is free. They can download it and use it at home. And it's not going to be, but we can't afford Adobe Photoshop. Well, no, you can't, because Photoshop has a horrible business model. And also they have horrible security. Have you heard about the passwords that got leaked? Oh, they first said, okay, well, it was only like 3.5 million passwords. Okay, so, oh, really? It was more like 25 million passwords. Well, okay, maybe it was actually more like 130 million passwords. And they keep raising the number, and not only that, but all of the password hints were saved as plain text. So, and the way they hashed them, I'm not going to get too geeky about this, but basically, they did do something to obscure the passwords, so it was hard to tell what they were, but they did it the same way. So if your password was the word password, by the way, that's silly. But if your password was the word password, but you had a really hard hint to guess, but someone else had the word password as their password, and their hint was it's the word password, silly, then they know your password too. Adobe did everything wrong when it came to security for their passwords, for anyone who had an account with them, and the credit card information was in there too. GIMP, they don't ask for anything. Just download it and use it. Now I got to make sure I close this because I am overtaxing my system. Let's close that without saving. Next up, Inkscape is, I think it's like similar to GIMP in a lot of ways. Matter of fact, before I started using Inkscape, there were some things that I was doing in GIMP that I should have been doing in Inkscape. Inkscape does what's called scalable vector graphics. And rather than just talk about it, I should probably show you. Okay, so here we go. And what this is, it looks like a drawing program because it sort of is. But if I say draw a circle on here or an oval, in GIMP, what it'll do is it'll say, okay, this pixel's white, this pixel's white, this pixel's white, this pixel's red, this pixel's white, and it'll go through and it'll have all that in memory. That's called a bitmap. Inkscape does not use a bitmap. It does scalable vector graphics. What it does is it says, there's a circle. It starts here, it's this big. So it renders it for you. Now, the cool thing about that is it's the scalable in scalable vector graphic. You ever take a small image and you make it large and it gets all pixely and ugly looking? If you take a scalable vector graphic that's an inch wide and you blow it up to fill a billboard, you will lose no quality. There'll be no pixels because it renders it on the fly. I have my majors use this to make cartoons, actually. This is a great tool for making cartoons. There's actually a website called openclipart.org, which is not open source software. It's a website. But all the images on openclipart.org are scalable vector graphics that you can download and edit in this program. So if you find a great picture of a student you want to use in a handout, a cartoon student, not an actual student, that you want to use in a handout, but they seem to all be Caucasian and you want to have it reflect maybe a more diverse audience, You could go in and change the faces to match whatever skin tone you want to do, which I think is much better that you have that option. I actually use it to make a bunch of tech ninjas. Let me show you my tech ninjas. I think I like them anyway. Let's see, that would be, not get with technology, but tool files, tech ninjas. Okay, so I made tech ninjas where basically, isn't he cute? But it's, well, I teach K through 8. This is what I use for behavior modification with my younger kids. Are you a tech ninja? Well, a tech ninja is not someone who makes a lot of noise walking down the hallway. They wouldn't want to stay out and get noticed. Tech ninjas are silent, unless they want you to hear them. Tech ninjas are courteous. Tech ninjas are kind. Tech ninjas care about the equipment. And I have these as charts. And when I have, you know how kids will flip cards if they misbehave in elementary school? I have cards, but the first color isn't green. The first color is black, because that's what ninjas wear. And then it switches to yellow, and then it switches to red. They love it. I've got middle school students who are like, Mr. Smith, I want to be a tech ninja. You know that's for kindergarten, right? I don't care. But I made this. But I didn't make this. I found the ninja template on openclipart.org, and I modified it to make the tech ninjas. I even did an animation lesson with my intermediate students where I printed out the tech ninja body parts. I had a bunch of different heads and I had a bunch of different bodies with the arms in different positions, colored them as they saw fit, and then they cut them out and they had the movie to make stop motion in. It was a lot of fun. But that's not open source software, so I probably should stop talking about that. You may have noticed I like bragging. I'm selling myself. Okay, so Audacity. Audacity is compatible with every operating system I've ever used, so far as computers are concerned. Not tablets, unfortunately. There's other software for tablets out there. But it'll even run. I installed it on my Macs. Yes, you have GarageBand, which is great on a Mac. But when I'm editing something that isn't music, or maybe I don't want to have a bunch of stock sound effects thrown in, I tend to use Audacity more, to be honest. I do like it. Now, the only problem with Audacity is it's not all one-stop shopping. You need to also download and install something called a lame encoder, which they have links to from audacity.sourceforge.org, which, if you click here, it'll take you to. And also, this is a link that takes you to the page that explains what we're doing with that, where it says, well, because of software patents, Audacity cannot include MP3 encoding software. So there are people who have rights to distribute that information, that particular part of it. You download that, install that. Audacity might ask you where you installed it to, but then that's it. And then it'll be able to save MP3s. If you don't want to bother with that, it'll still save audio files as WAV files, which are unencoded Windows media files. It's still audio, but it'll get a little bit larger. And let's open Audacity. There we go. So, I love Audacity for a bunch of reasons. One thing my students like about it is they look at these buttons up here and they know instantly what those things do. I don't have to explain it to them. What I do have a problem with sometimes is I need to make sure they're using the right microphone. Sometimes they have it set for no microphone whatsoever. I'm going to pick my blue snowball. Let's hope that my blue snowball can send to the video I'm recording in Open Broadcaster and Audacity at the same time, because I usually don't do that. And I start recording, and we get, oh, look at those blue squiggly lines. And if I stop talking, okay, and then I keep going. Now, I'm going to pause it. Actually, I'm going to stop it entirely. One thing that does confuse my students, they'll hit pause and think that stop. Pause means pause, not stop. Won't let you edit anything. Pause. They go in and say, I can't get rid of that. Stop it? Yes, I did. Stop button. Oh, and now it works for them. Now, what I really like about this, one thing I like about it is in GarageBand, if you find something you want to get rid of, like this long, awkward pause here, and the cough, I select it, and I hit delete. Gone. You can do that in GarageBand too. You can select an area and get rid of it, but you gotta split the tracks first, then the tracks are still far apart, so you got to drag them together. And if you do a lot of those edits and you want to make a change later, you got to drag a whole bunch of stuff at once. It's more work, in my opinion. If I want to do a simple edit for recording of, well, here's an audio tutorial on how to do something, or here's a podcast that I'm working on, I find Audacity is a little more streamlined for what I want to do. Now, if I'm recording something where I want a lot of sound effects and stuff, I'll use GarageBand. It is nice. Audacity is my go-to for audio recording, however. Another nice thing about it is I can adjust volume levels up here. These blue bars at the top, the max volume. But what if I wanted to? I can just volume this dot down, and now the volume will fade. And I can do the same thing on the other side. If you want to have it figure out how to fade out for you, effects. Got a whole bunch of them. Fade out, and it'll fade it out for you. You don't have to do that part. A really nice thing, which it does take some playing to get used to it, but they have a filter here called noise removal. Now, what you do first, you record some silence. You know how you've ever been able to get a classroom? If you have, please let me know. You know, there's always some type of background murmur or something, or even just a hard drive spin, something. Or in my case, I have 2 cats. I have more than one tutorial where I have to apologize because one of the cats decided to climb through the blinds. Not around the blinds to see out the window, but was literally weaving itself in and out of the blinds. That makes a lot of noise. This can't help you there. But I could record a part here. Selected that, I go to noise removal. Okay, get noise profile. I'm saying everything that I've selected right now is noise. And then I'd select everything, or at least the noisy spots, and go in, effect, noise removal again, and I'd say, okay, remove that noise. And I can adjust these. This is where it gets a little confusing, to be very honest. It's a matter of playing with it. Because audio is analog and analyzing it in digital format, so there's not one way of doing it. I'd hit OK, it would process, and it would take everything that fit that noise profile I told it to get, and it'll remove it from the background. If there was a fan running in the background, ideally I wouldn't hear it anymore, but I'd still hear it. Now you can remove too much noise, and remove too little noise. In the case where you do either of those, my favorite key combination of all time. I have a t-shirt today. Control Z will undo anything done. It works in almost any program. If you're on a Mac, you've got the same thing. It's Command Z. Control Z. But it's the same thing. That's the same. Whatever I just did, it'll undo it. And it's different programs will remember different levels of undo. Some programs will have an infinite number where you can go back to the very beginning. Some don't. But I can go back pretty far. I went back to before I recorded. If you undo too many things, go back up to edit. Now, Control Z or Command Z is a universal command where any program that has an undo, that's what it's going to tell you to do. The redo one varies. Some of them it's Control Shift Z, some of them it's Control Y. So I always go up to edit to see which one is for that program. I end up not keeping them. But now I just redid my recording. Now to save it, if you want to go back and edit that file because you got a lot of tracks, you want to keep the tracks separate and stuff, just go to save and it'll save it as an Audacity project. There'll be one main file and a bunch of other files in a folder that that main file links to. That's not something to share with people. If you want to share a file with somebody else, you're going to have to go down to Export. And it's going to ask you what kind of file you want. I have it right, the last time I exported it was an MP3, so it's picked that automatically. If you've never picked anything, it might have a different setting up here, but you can see there's a bunch of them in here. If you've never saved an MP3 before, but you have installed the LAM encoder, it will usually, depending on the version that you're using, ask you where the MP3 encoder is. It'll ask where the LAM file is. And you'll have to go through and find it on your hard drive and pick it. But once you've done that, it won't ask you again because it knows where that file is after that, and it'll be able to save MP3s just fine. Okay. No, let's not save those changes. All right. We are almost out of time. Actually, we are 1 minute over, but that looks like it worked perfectly because that was my last slide. For those of you with a QR code reader, there's the QR code for session evaluation. The session title was Open Source Software for the Classroom with a Budget. Those of you who are interested in doing that. I am going to go away from this for just a quick second to stop the recording. Stop streaming.